both. Congratulations for your book. Thanks for these minutes for the interview. So, Finding Freedom Part 2, ignored or not? Is true this information about the second part to the book?
Oh, well, I mean, we have, as I think HarperCollins have said themselves, there's a paperback of the book coming out later this year. It is not a sort of part 2, as people are describing it. It, of course, will no doubt bring us up to date on the current story. But, I think the beauty of Finding Freedom was really that it had such a strong start, middle and end. Carolyn and I were able to follow Harry and Meghan's story really from the moment they met until the moment that they officially stepped away from their royal roles. And that will always be the heart of Finding Freedom. And I almost think that beyond that, it's sort of Harry and Meghan's story to tell themselves. So the focus of this book is still very much on the original story. But, people are curious to see what they've done in the past year, and we'll of course make space for that.
How did this book come about, and how did the collaboration between you?
Well, Omid and I had worked together both in the television space and side by side in the Royal Press Corps, and we talked a lot about the coverage of the Duke and the Duchess, who were then just had announced their engagement, and we thought that there was a real opportunity to tell their love story and discuss why they had appealed to so many young people around the world, why they had really captured the imagination of the public. So we came together, and Omid, of course, is British and I'm American, and we thought that we brought kind of a unique perspective to the table, and decided that we would embark on the project.
Was it difficult to get interviews and sources for the book?
I think, if anything, we found that we had too much material for the book. We had spent, obviously, Harry and Meghan's story had developed so much over time, and so the interest that we had in terms of what we wanted to share throughout the book was also developing and changing too. And naturally along the way, that meant more characters were involved in Harry and Meghan's story. So we had this great opportunity to speak to pretty much everyone that had been part of their royal lives, their private lives. And I think due to the situation that we've heard them talk about in terms of not being able to speak up for themselves or receive support from the palace when it came to answering back to stories or misinformation in the press, there were many people around them that felt almost compelled to do that for them, looking out for their friends or the people that they worked for. And Carolyn and I putting this book together at that time was really the right time for that. So we were really able to speak to a lot of people who were more than willing to set certain areas of the story straight.
Have you talked with Harry and Meghan after the launch of the book last year?
Well, I've been here in the UK, so sadly, Carolyn and I were so used to, almost being alongside Harry and Meghan on a weekly basis. They were very busy with their work. We were there for all of their...
How was the reception to Prince Harry when he returned to UK to the Prince Philip funeral? It's true that he was shocked by the reception from his family.
I think that reports of frostiness by the family are largely inaccurate. In fact, we know that obviously he shares a very, very warm relationship with the Queen, and while things have been difficult since the Oprah interview took place, he was there really to honor his grandfather, and he did have an opportunity to reconnect with his brother and with Kate and other members of the royal family. But it was really an opportunity to be together with his family for the Duke of Edinburgh.
Do you think that was it spontaneous, the conversation between the Cambridges and Prince Harry after the funeral in Windsor?
Yeah, I thought it was so interesting that we had spent almost the entire 2 weeks following Prince Philip's death focusing on the procession before the start of the service and where Harry would stand and where William would stand. And actually, no one, I think, really thought that the major moment between the brothers would actually happen afterwards. So it made where they were sitting or standing completely irrelevant. And I think that moment outside the chapel was very organic. We saw, I think for both of them, it would have no doubt been quite emotional, not only being there to remember someone that they were so close to, but also as two brothers who perhaps don't have the fondest memories of funerals, having, at a very young age lost their own mother, but also they hadn't been in the same room together for over a year. And so to now be in this situation where they're able to see, eye to eye or, look at each other in the eyes, that will have no doubt brought a warmth to the situation that perhaps they haven't been able to have for some time. And I think for everyone watching, it was a moment we had all wished for and were happy to see.
How was the conversation between Charles, William and Harry before the funeral?
Yeah, there had been reports that there was a big family summit or, that they had sat down for a long conversation. And certainly from the conversations that I've had with sources, and I know it's been the same for Carolyn, that really the focus for everyone during that time was just on supporting the Queen, supporting the children of Prince Philip, and remembering his life. So there wasn't time made to discuss the issues that Harry and Meghan had faced, over the past few years or spoken about in the Oprah interview. I would say that this trip simply opened the door to those conversations further down the line. The ice has been broken now, and I think it will be much less awkward when it is time for everyone to talk.
So is it possible to fix the troubles between the two parts, two sides?
I think that you have to remember that there's deep love in this family and that this is a family, and everyone obviously has ups and downs in their relationship with the family. But as Harry said himself in the interview with Oprah, he loves his brother and he'll always love his brother. So while the feelings are very raw, the interview was a way to put some of these issues that needed to be addressed, the interview with Oprah, put some of these issues that needed to be addressed in the domain so that they could heal from them. But I think everyone is very anxious to move forward and to find a better space in the family.
Who has or had an interest in discrediting Meghan and Harry with false or inaccurate news?
There are a number of characters or influences in that scenario where we saw many negative stories and incorrect stories written about Harry and Meghan. I think probably one of the largest characters or players within that was the British press themselves, whose interest is, of course, shock, awe and bombshells. And so I think that was often the problem when it came to some of those negative stories written by Harry and Meghan. But I think ultimately, as we describe in the book, there were characters or individuals within the institution who didn't like Meghan's way of doing things or her approach to the role. And I think that you almost had this situation where there were people within the institution who were leaking some of that information to the press as a way to almost put Meghan in her place or to highlight the difficulty of working with her or whatever it was that they felt that their agenda was at the time. And I think for Harry and Meghan, it was just very frustrating that despite the fact that they knew this was going on, they weren't able to do anything about it.
Is the royal family afraid of the British press?
I think afraid's a big word, but I would say that there is definitely a very interesting relationship between the two. I've described it as this kind of delicate dance in the past where it's kind of give and take on both sides, and ultimately for the royal family to survive, to thrive, to exist, you need the support of the British public, and the British public is often led by or influenced by the mainstream press. And so that is always in the back of the minds of those within the institution when it comes to making certain decisions or choosing to deal with certain issues or not deal with them in certain ways. And I think that, as we've seen, for Prince Charles, who has gone from a man who perhaps was not particularly popular in this country after the death of his wife, to someone now who I think many are very excited to see stepping into this bigger role, a lot of that popularity or that growth in popularity is down to his relationship with the press and how they've helped grow his character in the public eye. That wouldn't have happened if the royal family didn't have or focus on that relationship between the institution and the media.
What do you think about the interview with Oprah Winfrey?
I think for Harry and Meghan, it was a moment where they felt like all the weight came off their shoulders, that they were truly able to move forward into their next chapter by setting themselves free of the things that they had kept to themselves for such a long time. I think we would have seen this interview happen much earlier if it wasn't for other issues going on in their lives, including the court case with the Mail on Sunday, which some of that was, of course, a focus on invasion of privacy. So Harry and Meghan were then very careful about how much they were sharing or not sharing with the world. And once that case was won and out of the way, it was really their sign or their opportunity to be able to speak up about all of the things that they've experienced over the past 4 years, in a space that they felt that they could trust the person that they were speaking to, that their story would be handled with respect. I'm sure those within the royal family feel very differently about the interview, but for Harry and Meghan, there's certainly no regrets. I think that it was something they felt they needed to do in order to be able to step forward.
What did surprise you the most about the interview?
I think that everyone universally was obviously most surprised by the issue that had been raised about the color of Archie's skin.
Listen, we knew a lot of what Harry and Meghan discussed in that interview because, of the reporting, including our book that is already out there. But there are a couple of things that they had obviously kept to themselves. The biggest being the issue over the concerns raised over the colour of Archie's skin. And I think for the couple, that would have been a very difficult decision to make, whether they shared that or not. But you have to look at the bigger situation here. I think the narrative that had built around their departure or them stepping back from their royal roles was almost that they were a couple that just wanted things their own way, that they almost couldn't have it all, so they walked away from it. And there were many that then saw them as a pair that had disrespected the institution. But actually sharing that story, no matter how difficult it was for them, helped us understand why they felt that wasn't an appropriate environment to raise a biracial child in. And I would think that many people felt very differently about their story after having heard that.
I think just jumping off of what Omid said as well, we were aware that Prince Harry had struggled with his mental health previously because he had discussed it previously, but we had no indication that Meghan was also suffering in a very difficult way. We knew that she had told Tom Bradby that she wasn't okay and that things had been very difficult with the tabloids, but we had no idea the extent of the mental health suffering that she was feeling. And I think the bravery that she showed in terms of admitting that this is something that she struggled with, like many, many people, and the bravery that she showed with her own miscarriage in order to help other people is something in the Oprah interview that I think resonated with a lot of people and will help a lot of people who have these issues that they're dealing with themselves.
Will we see the whole Sussexes, Harry, Meghan, and children, soon, more or less, because of the pandemic, with the royal family? What do you think? It's possible? When?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think any of us know when we're going to be traveling again, so that makes it hard to answer. But I think that with the arrival of their daughter very soon, both Harry and Meghan will no doubt be really keen to spend time with the Queen, or to allow her to have that moment to get to know her new great-grandchild. As we know, they had a very close relationship with the Queen before leaving the UK. That time that they all spent living on the Windsor estate made the Queen probably the family member that saw more of Archie than anyone else. And I'm sure that Harry and Meghan would like to continue that with the arrival of their second child. But in terms of seeing the couple at official family engagements, such as Trooping the Colour, that big moment on the Buckingham Palace balcony, I think that's unlikely. For the time being, at least. There are far too many issues that haven't been addressed yet that I think would make it almost impossible for everyone to get together in that way. But at the same time, we have seen that they're also very capable of putting their issues to one side for the family moments that do matter, such as Prince Philip's funeral service. I think for everyone, it was quite easy for them to forget anything that had happened beforehand because the reason that they were there was so important.
One other moment that, of course, we're going to see Prince William and Harry come together is to honor their mother's legacy later this summer. As you know, a statue is being erected on the grounds of Kensington Palace in the Sunken Garden, which is one of Princess Diana's favorite places. And both of the brothers, regardless of the issues that have been difficult for them and still remain raw, are deeply committed to honoring their mother's legacy and wouldn't proceed without one another. They're both united in honoring Princess Diana, and that will be an opportunity for the two of them to come together side by side for their mother. And I think that will be a lovely moment that we see at some point this summer. Diana's birthday is July 3rd, with the baby coming imminently. We'll have to see if things will take place on July 3rd or they'll be postponed. But we understand that, one brother wouldn't proceed without the other brother. This is very much a joint project that they're both committed to, and I think it'll be a very nice moment for the royal family.
You have met personally Prince Harry and Meghan. How are the new candidates when you are in front of Harry and Meghan?
I think what I've certainly appreciated and enjoyed about being around them is how truly committed they are to their work. I remember that first tour that Carolyn and I were with the couple for in Australia, and seeing Meghan arrive to the engagement so prepared, in a way like almost like a student that's done their homework. She had learnt the names of everyone in the room. She knew exactly why she was there. And I think we're often so used to this idea that members of the royal family perhaps arrive somewhere and there's someone there to tell them who they're talking to, or so on. And in some cases that's true, and others it's not. But I think Meghan's energy for her work was really infectious to be around. It made it really enjoyable to cover the things that they were doing, because they truly not only felt passionate about it, but also wanted to excel within it. And I think that for anyone covering their work, it was that energy that made it so exciting to be around. I think in terms of Harry, I've enjoyed seeing, I'm sure Carolyn feels the same way, I've enjoyed seeing his growth over the years. You know, I look back to some of the earlier royal tours and engagements that I got to speak to Harry on. And I think that he was a man that was still figuring out his place in the world, in society, and perhaps not as confident in himself as we see now. Now we see someone that's engaged in social issues and feels that knows that they can make change and feels a responsibility to make society or the world a better place. And again, it's been really enjoyable to see that growth over the years.